Good morning from Moscow. It's good to be with you again after my break, and I've got some of this morning's Russian newspapers to show you. In a moment, new rules for deporting foreign nationals from Russia. The grounds for expulsion have been expanded, and what one Russian newspaper is saying about Britain's new Prime Minister. First, Russia's fuel shortage, and Komsomolskaya Pravda today declares the fuel market is stabilising. Izvestia quotes Deputy Premier Alexander Novak as saying that the ban on exporting oil products, a rise in production and imports of fuel have helped steady the situation on the Russian market. However, Kommersant notes that on the domestic market a tense situation remains, first and foremost in Siberia and the Far East. The paper reminds readers that the situation on the fuel market became acute as damage to oil refineries increased as a result of attacks. Now, it doesn't clarify which attacks, it doesn't mention Ukrainian drone attacks. It does, however, list the government's delivery priorities. State structures and individual regions should receive fuel first, while the lowest priority is given to petrol stations of oil companies and independents, as well as to exports under intergovernmental agreements. The decisions taken so far make it possible to flatten the peaks of the shortage, but do not solve systemic problems with supply, analysts say. And now to this week's edition of Arguments and Facts, which notes that in recent months, queues at petrol stations have become a reality, and petrol prices in many regions have gone up. In this situation, sooner or later, every driver will wonder, how can they reduce petrol usage to save time and money? Well, the paper recommends cutting out unnecessary road trips. If a shop's nearby, perhaps it will be better to walk. And it's healthier. Also, service your vehicle on time. Take out of the car and the boot things you don't need this time of year. In a car, surplus weight means surplus petrol consumption. Keep an eye on tyre pressure and drive calmly. And I spotted this article in Nedelia, which asks, can you improve bad petrol with the help of fuel additives? And this warning, there is no point adding various supplements to petrol, chiefly because of the unpredictability of chemical reactions. Now, the fact that this question is even being discussed suggests that the quality of some of the petrol being sold right now isn't that great. Now, in talking of adding, Komsomolskaya Pravda reports that Russia's parliament, the state Duma, has doubled the number of violations for which foreigners can be deported from our country. Formerly, deportation could be ordered for 22 different administrative violations. It's now 45. These include disobeying the legal order of a police officer, soldier, FSB officer, petty hooliganism, violating rules on public meetings and picketing. If you called for violating the territorial integrity of Russia, get out. If you decided to slag off our army and navy or call for sanctions, then demob back from where you came. From this morning's Moskovsky Komsomolets, it's clear that Moscow doesn't believe that Russia-UK relations are going to get any better with Andy Burnham in Downing Street. In fact, for Russia, it's only going to get worse. Now, there's a famous Russian saying, Hren redki ne slashe, which literally means horseradish is no sweeter than garden radishes, or 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Well, here the writer starts by saying that Burnham is no sweeter than Starmer, but he goes on to conclude that for Russia, Burnham is not just no sweeter than Starmer, he's much more sour for our country. And the paper calls the new UK Chancellor, John Healey, one of the biggest Russophobes. But if we turn the pages, then eventually we come to the joke page in Moskovsky Komsomolets, and this comment on the size of Russians' salaries. My wallet's been stolen. My whole month's salary was in it. Naturally, I'm upset, but I'm sure not as upset as the thief.